doing here today. So we invited SanCoffee to talk about the weather events that have been happening in Brazil right now. So they've been having a severe drought since September last year. They had 3 waves of frost. All of those kinds of events, they have an impact in both quality and production. And that's something that everyone's talking about. That's something that is been on the news and is making the price on the market vary massively. So I think Brazil is very much on the spotlight right now. And because SanCoffee, they're a small cooperative in Santo Antônio de Minas, Santo Antônio do Amparo in Minas Gerais. It's like a micro region that's called Campo das Vertentes. They have like 20 members, like farmer members, and they also deal with multiple other smallholders in their area. So they have a big overview of what's happening in the region, how have people been affected, how their own farms have been affected. So I think we can start with that. But first, I would like let me see if I can't share my screen, Maria. So if maybe you can enable me, just so I can. Okay, awesome. Always need someone to do. Cool. Let me come here. So I just want Allan to introduce yourself to people, talk a little bit about your background, what you do at SanCoffee, and why you're in a good position to talk about all of this today. Are you muted?
Yeah, I am. Here we go. Is my video still working? Yeah.
Yes.
I'll proceed. Yeah. Thank you for the introduction, Luisa. I think you pretty much covered the main facts about SanCoffee. We are a co-op, a group of 20 member farms located in Campo das Vertentes. My personal role at SanCoffee, we are really a small team, which is very nice. So my background in studies is mostly in economics and international trade, but I also have a strong background in coffee. I started as a barista. My family has been in coffee business in Brazil for a long time, so I could always get that influence as well. And then at SanCoffee, what we do is we manage the full operation in terms of exports, marketing, because we are so close to the farms. We are also, what we say here, boots on the ground all the time. We're visiting. I'm not an agronomist myself, but I do have some experience in that sense, more of a practical experience. And like you rightfully said, because we are, just moving around all the time, we get a very good sensation of how things are going at the moment. And in terms of the weather patterns, I feel like that's where we can contribute the most.
I don't know if you can say a few words about Fabrício before he joins as well, because I think Fabrício, he's got the most experience in agronomy and more like in farm management. But I don't know if there is something that you can say to people ahead of him joining us.
Yeah, of course, Luisa. And again, this is great to have him on board because he's the one, he is really an agronomist. All his education has been in coffee. He studied in the Federal University of Lavras, which is a major research institute for coffee in Brazil. And besides working on our team at SanCoffee, he is the general manager. He's also the manager of one of the farms. So that brings a new perspective and angle to the discussion.
Oh, awesome. And we also have Anna here. So Anna, thanks for joining. Anna wasn't initially going to be in this call, but it's really cool and she can also contribute. And this is just a little map of where SanCoffee is based. So they are in the south of Minas. In the south of Minas, there is a micro region that is called Campo das Vertentes, and they are in pretty much the middle of it, in the heart of it, in a town that's called Santo Antonio do Amparo. Are you getting the denomination of origin now as well, Alan, for Campo das Vertentes? Cool, very cool. And just a few words about why we wanted to do this webinar. So I spoke a little bit about it already, about how the weather events that have been happening in Brazil, they're having a big effect on green coffee, big impact on it. And we at Algrano, we believe that roasters can make better and more informed decisions the more information they have about it, so they don't need to be concerned, or they don't need to be worried about what they're going to receive and how that's going to influence their roasting or their own quality control if they have the information in advance. So that's why we wanted to bring people that really know about this topic to share their experience and share their knowledge with you. We believe in exchange experience and exchange knowledge from producing countries to buying countries and vice versa. And I see we have Fabrício here as already. Fabrício, can you hear us? I think he's still joining. Fabrício? Hello? Alan?
Yeah, Luisa, while we are waiting for Fabrício, just to complement on that information, we have the region Campo das Vertentes, the name has already been recognized. So we are now fully registered as geographic indication region in Brazil.
Mm-hmm. So a geographic indication region, for those people that don't know, is a region that has very specific characteristics and has a specific profile to it, pretty much.
Yeah, correct. And since we're going to talk about the weather, which I think again is super useful, we are already seeing those effects on the market. But to give you some perspective, Campo das Vertentes, of course, is located in Minas Gerais. That's the name of the state, and that's the area that's responsible for half of the total coffee production in Brazil. So again, what we see taking place in Minas is definitely something that will have consequences in the whole country in terms of coffee.
So I'm sharing just some photos that I had from the south of Minas. These photos are not from Campo das Vertentes in particular, just some photos that Emater in Brazil shared with us. And these are photos taken after the second frost in July. But I don't know, Alan, what do you think? Can you tell us a little bit about what's been happening in terms of the drought and the frost, and how you see that, how many people are being affected by it, how it affected you in particular, and what do you think is happening from now on?
Yeah, of course, Luisa. So let's, those are two big topics. So let's start with the frost, I guess. And the frost, in a sense, it's more of it has a stronger visual effect than the drought. And then, of course, we can compare which one is actually damaging more the capacity to produce. But as you said, and the photos show this really well, this region south of Minas, Campo das Vertentes, is just north of Sul de Minas, as you mentioned. These areas have always been prone to frost, and this happens when we have severe winters in Brazil, so the temperature drops, and it generally starts in the valley and it moves up. So that's why we always, people always say coffee needs to be planted at some altitudes, because it also protects against the effects of frosts. Historically, you know, even if you look at the market prices, this has already happened before. You know, in the 70s, there was a big one, 75, in the 90s again. But in these last, let's say these last 2 decades, from 2000 on, we never really had a very strong frost. So people, in a sense, were feeling sheltered about it. And that's why it has shaken the market so much this time, because it was somehow unexpected.
And as far as I understand, there's usually what farmers will do, there's a frost line, so that their fields, they study their field. So they know where is more prone to being affected by frost and where is less prone, and they usually plant, and they don't plant beyond it. But is that, and some people are saying like, no, people got a bit complacent, they started planting a bit beyond that line. Is this because in the last 20 years you haven't had anything? So it's like, oh, it's not really.
Yeah, absolutely. That's correct. That's the reasoning behind it, Luisa, because we hadn't had a very strong frost for a long time. So people started challenging those limits in a sense. And then at the same time, those lower areas, they tend to be better for mechanized crops. So why not use them if you feel like, it's less likely they would be hit by frost, for instance. And that's why also, the coffee areas expanded below those lines. And that's why the effect this time was a bit stronger also. As you can see in the photos, the way it affects the plants is basically, the temperature gets below 4 degrees Celsius. And that at those temperatures, the coffee leaves, they will sort of burst. We say they burn because they look like very dry and brown, but the liquid inside the leaves expands because it freezes, and that's what really damages and bursts the plant cells and tissues. And of course, those leaves are going to be lost, and you can also lose some of the more the thinner branches, for instance. And those areas, basically, you lose these branches and leaves, and all the production that they could bear in the future will be lost as well. So that's the real damage, with different levels of intensity. Younger plants, they might go as far as, like dying from the frost. If it's not hit very hard, you may lose some production, some parts of the plant. Some of it can be reversed with pruning, but in any scenario, you will lose something for the next cycle. And that's what the market is already sensing, I think, in terms of, that's why the prices have been moving up.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to tell people as well. So the roasters that joined us today, if you want to send questions to Allan and Fabrício and Anna, you can use the chat box on the side. So please send them questions, and we'll be reading it to them during the call, during the presentation, and we can do it at the Q&A as well at the end. But it should be pretty relaxed. So as questions come in, we'll be reading it too and passing it along to Allan and Fabrício. And Allan, my question, or maybe it's the $1 million question: how bad was this frost? I mean, no one can precise it already. People are making lots of estimations. People are talking 6 million bags lost for next year. Is it already possible to say that?
Luisa, I think there are several ways to look into that. From a historic perspective, we have to say that this has been a major frost. People are comparing this one to the big ones that we had in the 90s, and perhaps not the one in the one that really became marked in history in 75, but it's probably one of the 5 or 6 largest that we had in history. So this is a really important event in that sense. Then to move forward to make forecasts about production, in my opinion, I think it's a little too early. We know that there are consequences and we know there will be a drop in production that was expected for next year. But I wouldn't put a number to that yet. You know, I think we are still in the beginning of the cycle for the next harvest, which in Brazil is in 2022. So again, I wouldn't personally go as far in terms of numbers, but I see some other analysts that have already been able to sort of quantify the damage of the harvest. But again, we know that this was a one that really had major consequences in a vast area.
It's very interesting because when I was talking to Emater, it was Sergio Regina that I was speaking to, and he said because like in the lowland areas, where was it now? I don't remember the name of the town, but you have Lago Furnas, so you have Furnas Lake. So Furnas Lake usually, so it kind of like acts as a defense mechanism for the farms around it against the frost, because the water absorbs the heat during the day and then releases it during the night. And because there had been such a bad drought from last year up to this year, the lake, the level of the lake was so low that the water couldn't act as a defense mechanism for the region, and then all the farms around the lake were really affected. Do you think that because the frost happened after the like a severe drought, was it worse, or it would have been a similar impact?
I think the drought makes it worse. Like you said, there is those areas by the lake that used to be more protected because of the water, like you just explained. You know, the water acts as a buffer, so the temperature tends to be less extreme in those areas. But the effects of the drought is basically that the plants were already fragile in a sense. You know, we are getting to the end of the harvest. That's the moment that which is the most aggressive against the plant, let's put it this way, because you know you need to remove the cherries from the plant. So overall, and because of the drought, the plants were already not in their best shape, let's put it this way. And then of course the frost adds up to this scenario in a sense. Extreme, the frost didn't affect all areas, only the lower ones. But again, so many factors that have been at play in the moment, and all of them are helping to create this scenario in which we see less ability of the plants to produce in the upcoming cycle.
In terms of quality, because I think that's one of the main concerns, not the main concern, because I mean, the impact it had on the producer's livelihood is huge. But from a roaster's point of view as well, I think there's also the concern of, so what's happening with the green coffee? How is this affecting the end product that they're going to receive? Should they be looking for something specific? Should they be aware of something when they receive the coffee?
That's a very good question, Luisa. And we a lot of people have been in contact with us also, again, curious about the effects. We saw this very large movements on the market. And this is something important to clarify. The frost itself does not have an effect in the current harvest, because we are already harvesting, and even cherries that were in the plant or attached to the plant at the moment of the frost, in general, they will not suffer as much as the leaves. So again, there might be some minor effects, but I don't think that would change the overall quality of those beans, of the cherries for this harvest. What we are losing is actually the capacity to produce in the next harvest. That being said, Luisa, in terms of other effects, like we commented on on drought, for instance. All those things, they, might change, I would say, more the aspect than the cup quality of the coffee itself.
But that's the frost. The drought, they say it's a bit different because it will impact how the bean develops, how the seed is formed. It affects mainly production, I guess, but does it have other impacts in quality as well?
Yeah, I think, there is always indirect impacts on quality. Let's say the frost, because of that, people will have to maybe speed up their harvest because they want to release the plants as soon as possible and prune them in a sense. In terms of the drought, like you said, screen sizes may be affected, so screen sizes will be on average lower on that harvest. And then because of all these things taking place, people might not be, and these variations, fluctuations on the market, people might not be paying so much attention for quality again, because their main concern is how they are going to keep their yields for next year, and prices are very high, so there is less of an incentive for quality in a sense, so I think there is all these indirect effects.
And so from what you've been seeing at SanCoffee, for example, is it like what happened in terms of screen size? And I don't know if Fabrício is here now. I don't know if Fabrício can hear us as well.
Hey, Luisa. Yeah, I'm here, and I've been following the conversation.
How are you?
From 20 minutes. I'm doing well. And you?
I'm good, thank you.
Yeah.
And Fabrício, I wanted to know a little bit from your perspective as well. As you're an agronomist, how are you seeing everything that's happening in Brazil, and how are you seeing how that impacts the quality of green coffee?
Yes, as Allan said, this frost has caused damages to the next, mainly to the next cycle, which is the 21st, 22. But the drought from last year brought impacts to this cycle, a reduction in around 30%, 30 to 40% in Arabica areas. And also the screen sizes were not affected too much. We are seeing good beans, good sizes. The yields of each size out of the ungraded lot is similar to the historic data that we have. And the thing is that there were good rains in February where the beans are expanding. The thing was before this time in the physiological needs of the trees, in August and September and October, when the tissues were differentiating from whether they will be new leaves or flowers, there were not too much tissues differentiated into flowers because the conditions was not good. So there was a decrease in the yield, in the production from at this cycle. And also it caused kind of a small impact in the next cycle because the branches, because we need to have growth in the branches, so there will be space for new cherries in the upcoming cycles. So there was an impact from the drought in this cycle and also in the next one due to the low, smaller growth of the branches. And considering the drought, the frost, the impact is kind of diverse in different areas, as in around Furnas Lake, it was more intense than it was in the other higher areas in Minas Gerais. But as Allan said, it's still early to predict a number. But people are saying 6 million bags to 8 million bags that will be that will be lost. But Luisa, the main problem I believe we are facing these days, and I believe it's everywhere in the world, is the increase in the cost of production, because everything has been, the price of everything has been going up very sharply. All the inputs, machinery, and so on. And it's a disruption from the pandemic. And in addition to that, cost of production is increasing. The drought and the frost made a reduction in the production. So the growers in total will have a smaller income, but the prices went up. But there are many growers in Brazil who had previously committed to forward contracts with the prices 30, 40% below. So they are higher costs, lower production, and they had committed their productions 30, 40, 50% of their production to forward contracts when the prices were way below. So the situation is not that comfortable to the growers in general in Brazil due to these three main factors.
And is it possible to, because I don't know, I imagine you as SanCoffee also had forward contracts. Is it like everything being renegotiated? How do you navigate that?
Luisa, we are a small group. It's, in a sense, it's kind of easier to navigate and to handle the situation. So far, we haven't had any default or any renegotiation. But I believe we cannot say that it's not going to happen, but there will be a couple of other regions or large players that will have to renegotiate, because it's not a matter of the growers trying to default and to take advantage of the higher price. The thing is that there are many growers that are suffering due to the cost of production increase, lower production, and they need to have cash flow to keep their businesses running smoothly. So if SanCoffee come to us and try to negotiate, we will help them as much as we can.
You know, I think a lot of people tend to see this and think, oh no, producers, they're making quite a lot of good money now, so everyone should be happy, and it's not necessarily the case, I guess. Maybe not
I'll give you an idea. The steel machinery fuel went up. It's nowadays twice the price it used to be 1 year or 18 months ago. Fertilizer almost 3 times, and there are many price and cost increase. And let's say 40% of the Brazilian it's a rough estimate, almost a feeling that 20 to 30% of Brazilian harvest for 2022 has already been committed to forward contracts. But don't publish this number because it's a rough estimate.
I won't quote you on it. This recording will be. I'm afraid. And Allan and Fabrício, we wanted to talk about more specifically about quality. I think you guys are thinking about doing some demonstrations in terms of coffee beans, because I think what happens with drought is so you have smaller screen sizes, you have some malformed beans that they don't quite fill up during the bean filling stage, or I don't know if you want to talk about density as well. And because we had a bit of like a mismatch with our timings, it might be hard for you to demonstrate now, but Anna is in the lab, so I don't know how you want to do it, if you want to discuss it a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just had one quick comment, and then you're right. I don't think Fabrício will be able to be in the lab, so we can talk about it, but we will not be able to demonstrate, I guess, which is really a pity in a sense. But just a quick comment on what you were discussing with Fabrício. I feel like at these moments that we see extreme situations in the market, that's when we realize even more how much the direct relationship model makes sense, because again, we feel like we are more protected because of this business model. In a sense, most of the growers with whom we work, which are part of the co-op or really linked to our business model, they have been committed for a long time. So we know that even if prices move in any direction, these producers will be able to continue supplying. And in the past, it has been the opposite. You know, the prices have been very low, very recently, you know, people forget, but in 2018, 19, the price has been below $1 per pound, and now we have been over $2 per pound. So again, I feel like this business model really makes sense to help to buffer those fluctuations. And then I don't know if it would be possible to do, but I would love to get some perspective from the roasters also, if they can chat on how they are coping with this situation, you know, because high prices, at first, people think that they are really good for producers, but market instability, I feel like it's bad for everybody. And as Fabrício said, the market is just compensating for losses because people will produce less, they have already committed parts of their harvest, etc. So not necessarily producers are being able to take advantage of this moment as much as people would think.
Mm-hmm. I think we could promote people to panelists, Maria, and then they can jump in and have a more open discussion. What do you think?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So if any of you would like to share your perspective, please just raise your hand and we will promote you.
I think we can promote everyone, so like people can see each other, and then it's a bit easier to
And we are fully aware that for roasters, it's not easy. We are talking about 30-40% price increase in a very short time. So how can you communicate that to your clients and consumers, for instance? And like Fabrício said, because of the pandemic and the amount of economic stimulus that we had around the world, inflation is rising everywhere also. So, you know, that creates a very complicated environment for everybody to operate, I think.
No, and people have been affected by the pandemic a lot on this side as well. So having to lay off a lot of people, having to losing a lot of clients. So I think it's been really tough on everyone. Let me just see, I think we're promoting people. And do you think Allan, I think we can maybe do a bit of a recording about more focus on the demonstration of the different quality aspects for people later, so we can send a follow-up email to this presentation so they don't miss that demonstration as well. But I think Anna told me that she has the coffee in little pots. So I don't know if you want to advance people something that you think is the most relevant thing for them. Maybe we can just cover it quickly.
Yeah, let's do that. So let's Anna take the lead on that. Maybe she can show us, and then we will make comments on where we feel like those defects would be more linked in the production process. And some of them, because this is unsorted coffee, so maybe these will be fairly new for a lot of the roasters, I guess. These are the beans that never get to destination.
I will try to show you here. It's as Allan said, it's an unsorted coffee, and this creams is not that big. I don't know if you can see. I think that I will show and I will let Allan explain. This is a coffee that do not have the full, how can I say, Allan, it's a coffee with less creams, you know, the bica corrida.
Is it smaller?
Yes. Yes, it's a sign of the effect of the weather on the conditions of the plants. Allan, please go ahead and explain the process for the roasters.
Anna, do you have the box with the defects? I feel like that would be easier to show.
Here, just a second that I will show.
Or maybe you can get the tray that has all the defects. But basically, this is the coffee as we receive it at the warehouse. So in Brazil, most farms, they will go, there is no trade of cherries. So most farms will process their own coffees until they reach the final stage in humidity levels, 8.5%. And what we get at the warehouse is this green coffee, which is unsorted, because most of the farms, they will not have the equipment to remove defects on the final stage like we do. That's something that generally takes place at the warehouses. So the sample that Anna is showing is unsorted greens as they come from the farm in Brazil. And again, there will be different screen sizes, pea berries, a certain number of defects. It goes in general, what's common in Brazil is 10 up to 20% of the coffee we consider that to be lower screens or defects. So coffees that wouldn't normally be exported. So, and then Anna, I'll just make a quick comment here, and then maybe you show some of these defects. The most common ones would be blacks and sour and green beans. And all of these would be the result of bad procedures during post-harvest. So that would be basically, producers that didn't manage the heat of the dryer very well, or coffees that were harvested very green or overripe, for instance, and those would produce beans that look like that, so not very pretty. And again, in order to separate those, we would need, because they have the same size and the same weight as regular coffees, it has to be separated by a color sorter. Then we have a full range, and maybe you have some examples of what we call shells or beans that are malformed, as Luisa said. There are so many possibilities, like the genetics of the plants, but also the fact that during the drought, there might be less water available, so the beans will not grow, or again, you can see those shells. These are separated by density, because again, these beans are much lighter, so you can use a densimetric table, for instance, and those are a bit easier to separate.
Is that something that you're seeing more now, Allan? More shells as well?
It is this year, Luisa, indeed, and mainly because of the drought.
So you have more what they call xoxos as well. So I don't know if you could explain to people exactly what xoxo is, because it's not really there's not really quite a translation, like a good translation for that in English too, with the same thing that they do in Brazil, with the same ring that it has in Brazil.
Mm-hmm. Luisa, if I could add, these xoxos, I believe it's related to the cherry, not to the bean itself. The xoxo means that the cherry, instead of having two beans inside, due to lack of rain or any other weather or nutritional condition, the plant only forms one bean inside the cherry. So the cherry itself, the dried one, is xoxo, which means that the yield will be compromised, because instead of having two beans inside, there will be only one. So this is one of the causes of the drop in the production in Brazil this year, due to the less drought we had in September and October last year.
And is it a less dense bean? Does it usually get removed as well in the sorting process?
Actually, the inside the cherry, there is one regular bean with regular density, and it goes into the ungraded lot to the warehouse. The part where there is no bean, it goes away alongside the husk during the hulling process. No bean inside.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, so there's not really a problem that people have to worry about.
No, considering the green bean, no worries about that. Only considering the yield from volume of cherries harvested to the quantity of green bean produced.
And one question that I had as well that I want to talk to you and Allan, Fabrício, is about the relationship between screen size and quality, because a lot of people believe that big beans are the best ones, and because a lot of the time they're the more expensive ones as well. So if you have like these African coffees, the AA usually cost more than the AB. So the screen 18 will be more desirable than the screen 16. But the relationship with quality and size is a bit not very direct or not very obvious. What do you think about that?
Luisa, it's kind of controversial. There are people that believe there are a big difference and others that don't. I will give our perspective about that and try to explain a little bit, considering the reasons behind it. Yes, there is a difference in quality. Those 16, 17, 18, they are all good ones. And also 14 and 15, also the smaller ones can be good. But usually, considering a huge number of beans, usually, average speaking, those smaller ones come from more immature cherries. So usually they are more astringent than the larger ones. So there is a correlation, but it doesn't necessarily mean that all the small beans are bad ones. If they come from mature beans, they are good. But if they come from immature or almost mature cherries, they have less complexity. They are less sweet. So the thing is whether the small beans come from immatures or mature cherries. If from the mature ones, there is no problem. But in general, generally speaking, average speaking, the small beans come from immature cherries, so the quality, the complexity of the beverage is lower than in comparison to the larger beans.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Agree, Allan?
Yeah, and I would add also, that really depends on varietals. People don't realize, but different varietals, they will have a different distribution and percentage of screen sizes. We even have some varietals that will produce much more pea berries than others, in a sense. But I fully agree with Fabrício, and I would love to hear from the roasters also, because some people say that as long as you have a homogeneous lot to roast, even if it's pea berries or lower sizes, but if the mass of the beans inside the roasting machine is similar, you can always have sort of a similar, you change your roasting curve, but you have a similar result in the end.
And everyone loves Ethiopian coffee, and there's nothing less consistent or less homogeneous than Ethiopian coffee, and it still ends up tasting really nice. And I know there are very different characteristics as well of the coffee itself. But what are the varieties, Allan, that have a different distribution of screen size, or like have more mocha or more pea berry than others?
In our case, in general, Mundo Novo and Acaya have traditionally been plants with higher percentage of higher screens, let's put it this way. And some of these new varietals nowadays, just like Arara, for instance, maybe people heard about it, they have been selected. So there is some genetic work also to increase the proportion of higher screen sizes on those plants. And then on the lower, a bit the lower end, I would say perhaps Icatu and some of the Catucaís would be on the lower screen sizes. Most of the times roasters will not see that, because if you buy a certain number of screen, maybe in our perspective, we will need more coffee to get to that, more or a larger volume in a sense. Fabrício, I wonder if you have, if you agree with that, with the varieties or any other ones to add.
No, perfectly said. I was remember one case, one example of a friend of us, a roaster in Netherlands. He used to purchase 16 up beans of yellow Catucaí, direto da roça, natural. And it's a very fruity forward coffee, very complex. And he was in a need to have a less fruity, a good espresso base. So what we did, we started to send him a couple of, and it was his choice. He asked us to cut the 14, 15 separately from the 16 up. And what we did was to, according to him, and we also agree with the opinion, with the assessment, is that the 14, 15 is more chocolate and less complex, less fruity flavors. So now we get one ungraded lot and we split 14, 15 so he can use in his espresso blends. Also a good coffee, but less complex. And he uses for filter the larger beans that we sell him. So that's only an example.
And Fabrício, so now that, well, you have all this, you have drought, you had frost. Well, frost is not really impacting, but how do you notice when you're grading coffee in the lab, how different it is? So like you need more coffee to get the same amount of clean coffee or exportable grade coffee, but is it changing the grading process in any way? Are you having to use more lower screens to be able to bulk the coffee, to be able to have a bit more of an interesting volume, or are you still being able to maintain the same grades or the same grading system that you did before?
Luisa, it's a very good question, and it can be different in a different business model. But at SanCoffee, we are keeping the same grade that we doing, because our growers, they have two channels to sell their coffees. The one, direct exports, so the specialties. So we usually do 16 up. So the production and their yields are lower due to the harvest, due to the drought. And what we could do was to get to our roasters and say, oh, would you agree to have 14 up so we can compensate for the drop in the production, and to send you smaller beans so we can have a larger share of our ungraded coffees being sold? That would be an option. But the thing is, our growers, they have not only the direct exports, they also have their commitments in the domestic market. So the thing is that we need to use the smaller beans to fulfill the commitments that our growers have with domestic market. And in this way, we are able to keep the same grade that we do for our exports. But for those that need to fulfill their contracts with direct exports or with domestic players, and they only have a specific amount of coffee, it can be a good option for them to change a little bit the way that they grade the coffee and to add, for example, the 15 screen sizes beans into the bulk lot.
Mm-hmm. And I think there is like an indirect impact of this reduction of volume and quality as well that we haven't spoken about, is that the fact that you have a lot more space to process, right? So it's a lot more relaxed in a way to do the post-harvest of the coffee. So you have more space on the patios, you have more space on the beds, you can do the drying better, right?
Yeah, that's everything has a positive aspect, right? Even a very small crop this year with the volumes down due to the drought brought this positive aspect, which is that we can take better care of the coffee beans, coffee cherries or parchment coffees being dried in the patios, and also do more microlots because we have plenty of space available to play around with these cherries.
Fabrício, so I'm going to wrap up now, just because we're kind of like on time, but I want to wrap up with the main question that people want to hear. So you're cupping your coffees every day, to cupping coffees from all the farms, cupping coffees from your partners, evaluating the quality. How is it like? How are these coffees performing? How are they comparing to previous years? Like last year was a really good harvest in terms of quality. I don't know if is it like similar or is it the same? What is it tasting like?
Yeah, Luisa, last year was the 2020 crop was one of the best ones that I ever experienced in my professional lifetime. This year there was the reduction in the volume, but the quality has not been affected too much by the drought nor by the frost. So as far as we are able to understand from the coffee that we have already received in the warehouse, the quality is good as it was in 2020. Only the volume was compromised.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much, Fabrício. I don't know if there's anything else that you or Ana you want to say to the roasters that joined. From my side, I'm just saying that, so we've recorded this webinar. We're going to send it to you on a follow-up email. And I would also invite you to check out the profile of SanCoffee on the platform. They have a page with all their coffees that are already available and the coffees that are coming up all listed there. And you can always get in touch directly with SanCoffee and send them a message if you want to know more. They are very responsive. They are very knowledgeable. So I really encourage you to start a conversation and to learn more. But Fabrício, I don't know if you want to say something else as well.
No, only thank you for organizing this event, Luisa and Algrano team, and the attendees that came and spared a couple of minutes of the busy day to see us and to understand a little bit what's going on in Brazil. And yes, we'll be here for at your full disposal and to assist you with whatever you need. And because as Allan said, that's why we are here for, and these direct relationships are highly important for us to increase and to enhance the sustainability of the business of the growers with whom we work with. And thank you very much. There is only one question here I was about to type down the answer in the Q&A, but yes, the interest rate, there's a question about money availability and interest rates in Brazil. The availability of resources, financial resources, is kind of the same, reasonable for producers, but yes, the interest rates has been rising because of the inflation. So the benchmark here in Brazil, interest rate benchmark rate has been going up in order to try to contain inflation. So there will be also an impact in the loans that the growers get to fund the business.
Okay, thank you, Fabrício. And David and other guys. So if you want to talk to Fabrício further, please check him out on both Instagram and his Algrano profile. I really vouch for him because he always like knows very much in depth about a lot of subjects around coffee. So thank you everyone for joining. Thank you Fabrício. Thank you Ana. Say thank you to Allan for me because I think he had to leave. But it was really nice seeing you. It was really nice talking to you guys. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Take care. Have a good day.